when it comes to South Africa and what policies led us to where we are today, there's a myriad of them. And I think the best way to describe how we got to where we are is to actually explain a concept that we often talk about when doing analysis here on South Africa, or the commentators here. And that is the term South Africanization. And that's something that a lot of people have used when describing their own policies in their own country. But there seems to still be a lot of people that are unaware about what South Africanization actually means, and a lot of misconceptions about it. So I think when I explain that, that's going to set the foundation for the rest of the conversation. And then we can always go into specific examples of this phenomenon. So specifically in South Africa, one of the key things that has put us on the path where we are today is the fact that we are a one-party state, effectively. We since 1994, when the first democratic elections were held, we've had the ANC win that election, and for the past almost 30 years, the ANC have an unbroken record of being the national party. That's one of, and what comes with that type of track record is the fact that the line between ruling party and government starts becoming very, very blurry, not just to the public, but to politicians themselves, because they start acting in the way that to get rid of the ruling party would destroy the entire system. It would mean to reject the ruling party is to reject the entire government as a whole. It almost becomes this chimera, the same thing. That's one of the main things. Another thing is where South Africa has become just this kleptocracy, where the government's primary aim, not the stated aim, but the aim that you see is just the enrichment of many officials and giving them a free ride on the gravy train. And we have some of the highest taxes in the tax rates in the world, so they have a nice deep pool, but a shrinking pool to get those funds from. And the other thing about corruption in South Africa is the fact that corruption is not just rampant, it's mandatory. So the only way, if you were to go into business where the government is going to give you a subsidy or a tender, you need to do favors for one faction or another within the ANC. You're going to have to choose an ANC a faction within the ruling party or a politician within the party to get on your side, to get that business from the government. So that's something else that's disturbing. Another thing is that power is continuously centralized in the hands of the state. And this is a phenomenon and a pattern that you see for the past 30 years, where it's only centralized in the hands of the state. And the only times when the state loses power or control over anything, it's not willing, it is when it's forced to, because of a collapse of capacity. But this is not something that started in 1994. It forms part of a long trend that's older than 100 years of state centralization being the only solution in South Africa that people look towards. Finally, I think something that needs to be taken into account is that with this state centralization, increasing state centralization, comes things like a complete monopoly on services like power generation. So this week, I did a stream on my channel that was almost interrupted by rolling blackouts. South Africa has had rolling blackouts for the past 14 years. So there are 14-year-olds in South Africa that don't know a country without rolling blackouts. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that. But one of the reasons is, firstly, government has a total monopoly on, or almost total monopoly on power generation. And secondly, the government has this, and we'll get into this later, the racial agenda of the government, where they have all these race laws, race quotas, discriminatory laws that give mandates on how many people of every different race and group you have to employ, or that have to be represented in your company and the management and everywhere. And that trickles down to the power generation, something as critical as power generation as well, where you have a national utility that's struggling to even provide power, but the agenda of having a representative employment and management in that state-owned enterprise is still priority for the government, even though you are then inherently not choosing people based on merit. I think that would be the way to sum it up in the shortest terms. And like I said, I have a lot of examples we can go into, but those are the broad path that got us to where we are today, I reckon.